So the first step in our disassembly guide is going to say if the hammer is in the cock position, pull the trigger and ease the hammer forward with the thumb. So basically we're going to take our safety off, and a rule of thumb with any trigger group is you never want to just let it fly forward on its own. If you look on here real close, you can see that somebody along the lines had let it go forward a few times, and it actually dented our trigger frame here. I think it's actually an inland frame. The only part that's kind of neat on this, well, it's all kind of neat to me, but the trigger itself is actually a Rockola. So that was pretty neat. I thought that was kind of awesome in there, and I'll show you that later. So the next step is to insert a punch through the spring plunger. With this, it's going to be this little hole right here. And there's kind of a guide rod inside of here that it's going to come out through this hole when we compress it. So we want to pull it back and bring it to the right. That's going to be the easiest way to actually disassemble this. Let me grab, my glasses here. Put these on. You shouldn't have to worry too much about this going flying because you are putting your punch through. I did notice if you push it all the way through and you try to take it out, you're going to end up hitting your actual hammer. So I try to keep it somewhat close to it. So I'm compressing it. We're going to just bring it off to the side and slowly letting it out. Whenever you do this, when we put it back together, that is kind of a pain to actually do there. So we'll set those two aside. And the next step is going to be press out the hammer pin and remove the hammer. Another neat thing about everything on this trigger is there is a lot of parts moving around on this, and there are some nice close tolerances on there, which is great for, precision kind of machining and stuff, but it kind of sucks for getting in the mud and stuff. So that is one fault that I will say with the carbine. However, nothing on this trigger group has to be peened or press pinned or roll pinned in. So that's really great. You can do all this stuff yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pin here out that holds our hammer in, and the hammer does have a little bit of spring tension from the sear. So I'm just going to control it as I take it out. There's some videos where it kind of flops out, but I like to control it because I hate when stuff goes flying. So there's our hammer. Our next step is going to press out the trigger pin, releasing the sear, sear spring, trigger, and trigger spring. So that's going to be this pin right here is going to be next. Now the way that this operates is inside of this area between the trigger and the sear, which is this here, there's a spring that keeps the sear in the upward position. So once I take this pin out, that sear is going to want to flop out of here, and that spring is going to want to go flying. So the trick, and this is where the plastic bag comes in handy, the trick to do to save yourself from being on your hands and knees for hours on end looking for one spring is to put it in a plastic bag like this. And some of the thicker ones are better. Ziploc bags aren't the greatest because they, you can't really get into those. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow this pin all the way through. I'm going to grab the 3/32 punch, and I'm just going to push it through, and see, you hear how it clicked. So I followed it through, and now I can slowly ease this sear and trigger out of here without it going flying across the room. When we were taking up, see there, it just popped off. When we were taking apart slides on M9s, you had your springs for your safety, and those go flying. So that's just a little tip for you guys. So going back to it, here's our sear. This was our pin that we took out. There's our sear spring, and that will fit inside just like that, inside the trigger group. And then We want to also be careful, because one thing it does tell us next is through the hole in the bottom of the trigger housing, depress the magazine. So it really didn't mention too much about this spring here, and this is kind of our trigger reset spring. So I'm going to watch that so that doesn't go flying. And I should really put this back in the bag for this portion, but I can control it with my finger. So my trigger just lifts right out, and there's my reset spring, and that kind of just sat in there like this, and it pushed down so my trigger would go back forward. Whenever you pulled it, it didn't stay in the backward position, it would just pop forward. So you can see that that spring, that trigger reset spring, or that sear reset spring, fits down inside of our trigger, and our sear fits right on top of there. It's going to be a pain in the butt whenever we go to put this back together, because I have to push all this together like this, which is fine and dandy, but whenever it's in the space of this, and my fingers this fat, I can't get it in there. So it's one of those tricky things. I messed around with the chamber indicator, and then I ended up using a punch. So hopefully it doesn't take me 12 more times to try to get that out of there. The next step is going to be to take our magazine, let's see what the book says. Through the hole in the bottom of the trigger housing, depress the magazine catch retainer plunger and slide the magazine catch out, releasing the magazine catch plunger and the spring. Remove the safety and shake out the safety in the plunger. So what that all means is inside this hole there is a plunger, and that plunger has a spring behind it, and that spring serves two purposes. One purpose is to keep our magazine catch from just flying off of here. The second one is for our safety, to give us our safety detent. One thing that happens is right inside of here, in between where you depress the magazine release, there's a plunger and a spring, and that spring will go flying if you're not prepared for it. So we're gonna get our bag back out, and I'm gonna put the stuff actually in my magnetic pan here so it doesn't walk away. Go back in my bag, and the only thing I'm doing inside this bag is I'm pulling this plunger back that's inside of here, and then I'm going to push this magazine release off. So pulling back on the plunger, that releases the magazine release. It kind of snagged up on me right there, so I'm going to do it one more time here and pull it the rest of the way off. There we go. Oh, that's going to go flying. So once again, we had more spring tension there. So if we go back to how this was set up, you can see all I did was push this plunger here back in towards the safety, and I slid our magazine release out. So there's that. Here's our magazine release spring and plunger. And then I can pull this little gem out of there. It's a spring with two plungers on each side, and one of these interfaces with the safety right here. That gives us our detent. Yeah, that gives us our detent right there. And that's it. That's every part in this trigger group removed. There's nothing else to it. I mean, it's just a crazy machined piece of metal. So with that, let's go and look at our springs here. So the first spring that I have, I'm not sure how they really come off, and I'm kind of hesitant on taking them off, is for our detent. And if I match these up, it doesn't look like, maybe that spring there would be good for our detent. Let's see. I can take that one out. Well, we'll start with the obvious ones first. So this was our hammer spring. This is what gives our hammer the forward momentum. Here's our old one, and here's our new one. There's quite a difference there. Another, like I say, it's a 1/2 inch. So we'll take this guy and we'll set him off to the side because we're replacing him. I want to make sure that our spring fits on there good. And yeah, we have a lot more spring tension, so this is going to be a real treat to put back together. Let's go with our magazine spring here. Let's see what matches that. And if you recall, this is the spring that pushes the magazine back out. So that's, or the magazine catch back out. That's definitely not it. That's, these two here are too small. See the difference in those? So it's not that spring. I think that's the match right there. So that's another good one we have. And I will replace that one because this one here just kind of pushes right onto it. The manual actually did say, you know, if removed, replace this spring on this part. So that, it did have that good going for it. This is going to be kind of a pain. It might be a place that I have to cut out. What I'm doing there, what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to put the screwdriver in between the top of the plunger and the top of the spring, and I'm just ever so slightly trying to pry it off of there. I don't want to completely booger up my spring, because if I do that, then I don't have it anymore. Let's see. And this probably would be a good time to cut. So I'm going to get this spring off and then I'll get back.